Hey there everyone, Hanyou here, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 1 Onikakushi. Last episode, we practiced our swing for a bit, and then Rina stalked us for a bit. Again, more like tailed us, but anyway, carrying on from where we left off last time. Stop following me. How? Still glaring at Rina, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked for a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again, so I yelled at her once more. I told you not to follow me! Eek! But my house is in the same direction. Then walk ahead of me. I'll start walking once I can't see you anymore. I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward. I'd like to go home together with you. Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just blurting out random lies. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It seemed that the seething anger within me was written all over my face. Even without me saying anything, Rina had understood what I was feeling inside. If you get it, then go. I swung the bat, urging her again to walk. Rina looked back and forth between me and the bat and started walking hesitantly, then stopped again. Go on then, hurry. I'm going, so please stop with the bat. It's scary. Rina guarded herself while pointing at me holding the bat. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using the bat for baseball. I lowered the bat but still guardedly opened the way for her. Go. There's no problem now, is there? There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly so as to not set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped completely, having barely moved at all. Hey, don't stop. Then a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. The dust got in my eyes and clouded my vision. While rubbing my eyes with my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rina didn't even try to attack during that opening. Attack me? No, she hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound of her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air had changed? Without me realizing it, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. It was like the air had suddenly become invisible and concrete, like Rina and I were locked in this space. Rina didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared at her back. Rina was the first to break the silence. Instantly, she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed her shift from Rina into that other person who looks like Rina. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with a kind of bewildering pity. Carelessly, I felt relief upon hearing that pitiful voice. Well, excuse me, but, can I ask you something? Too shy to even turn around, Rina squeezed her voice out desperately, as she trembled. What? Why do you have a bat, I wonder? The question Rina asked was by no means unexpected. I can carry whatever I want. But, you didn't have one up until today. Why so suddenly? It's alright if I decide to do something suddenly, isn't it? Is it strange that I have a bat? But because, Keiichi, you're not the kind of person to play baseball. It's weird. I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for, and I was getting tired of answering her. I just suddenly got the urge to play baseball. Is that so weird? It's weird, she answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly. I just suddenly wanted to play baseball, and I wanted to practice my swing, so I'm carrying around a bat. What's strange about that? Strange. Weird. Definitely. Why is Keiichi-kun also? Your ramblings are annoying me. Is it that strange for me to have an interest in sports? I tried to sound a bit more threatening to end the conversation. Until my suspicions about Rina were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions. I'm sorry. Don't get so angry. Rina still didn't turn around and spat out words of apology one after the next. Just one last thing. Tell me one last thing. I don't feel like talking anymore. Hurry up and go. I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely. But even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rina asked her final question. Why is that bat the same, too? What did she mean by the bat was the same? I had no idea what she was talking about. What are you saying? I mean, why is even the bat the same? I don't understand what you mean at all. Say it clearly. Even still, Rina didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed, I mean, why is even the bat the same as Satoshi-kun's? Satoshi being... Huh? Upon hearing that name out of the blue, I became dumbfounded for a moment. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Rina had tried to cover it up by saying he was transferred, but Oishi-san told me clearly that he was missing. Quite clearly that he was missing. He was the student who had sat at my seat up until last year. He was believed to have been demoned away by Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict, and not long after that he suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... what? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be? Satoshi Hojo. It was a bit difficult to see, but that was what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see, so this was Satoshi's bat. Hold on a second, why the hell did the music suddenly get so loud? There we go. I see, so this was Satoshi's bat. Oh. This was Satoshi's bat. Since nobody was using it, I borrowed it. That's not a problem, is it? That's not it. The way Rina said that made it seem like this bat was something that should never be touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine or a memento of the deceased. I could only stand there perplexed and unable to respond. Rina continued speaking without waiting for a reply. Why is it that you're doing the exact same thing Satoshi did when it happened to him? Rina was talking about more than just the bat belonging to Satoshi. It was the same with Satoshi-kun. He joined a baseball team, but he didn't really like baseball. What does that have to do with me? Satoshi-kun also suddenly started walking around with a bat one day. He joined a team, but he wasn't the type to play sports. What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen carefully, Keiichi. Rina is trying to tell us something important. Satoshi-kun also one day came to school all by himself all of a sudden, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he suddenly started practicing his swing, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he began carrying the bat around with him, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he suddenly what? Rina had swallowed her words. Rina's sudden silence brought a hush back to the surrounding area. It was then that I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi's. What was the meaning of this? Up until now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I had never paid much thought to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything of what he'd done. My actions today should have been my own creation after all the planning I had done. Excuse me. But they had been the exact same as Satoshi's. Then Satoshi. No, more importantly, if both Satoshi and I acted the same, then there was a really good possibility that what happened after would be the same. Rina, that day, what happened to Satoshi? Rina knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. Forget about what happened to a guy in the past. Rina knew what was going to happen to me. Answer me, Rina. Satoshi, what happened to him? With that, I grabbed Rina's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me. She's got void eyes, doesn't she? As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body. Yep. I told you, Keiichi-kun. It was that person that I didn't know. At least, it definitely wasn't the Rina Ryugu I'd been talking to up until now. The voice just now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning her around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced like a cold needle, the smile on her face that invoked an image of having been carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine, my mind froze under a layer of rime. Both of Rina's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before, Rina brought her face close to mine, so close I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper. Then, like the curve of a crescent moon, she grinned. I told you, Keiichi-kun. After a short pause, Rina repeated the same words again. Satoshi-kun, you see, transferred out. Transferred meaning what? What Rina meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I was not previously aware of. My throat and lips dried up. I couldn't even acknowledge what I had just heard. All I could do was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rina saw that as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2-3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out and I fell to my knees pathetically. Rina and me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile. That had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand. But I could neither stand nor escape her with her gaze shooting through my eyes. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now it was useless to me. I was like a fly caught in her web. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body. I could feel it dripping from my skin. But you won't, will you, Keiichi-kun? Rena finally released me from that cage of time after what felt like an eternity. But her question was missing something important, and was incredibly vague. Once again, I swallowed hard, urging her on. Do what? What did she not want me to do? Transfer. Oh boy. Pitch hitter. Satoshi and I had what? All my well-planned actions throughout the day turned out to have been nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done. Satoshi, had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly, and for no reason, at least none that I had noticed, planned to kill him. Then, fearing for his life as I am, he got a bat to protect himself and carried it around every day to practice his swing. And then, one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi still at wherever he transferred to? Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid knob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key attached to my fur seal keychain. I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take off my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me. Like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space all the way through the door. But there was undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now, Keiichi. How do you know they're there, even though they're behind you? Because I could hear the sound of flowing hair. There was no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I could hear the sound of them blinking. Keiichi Maebara, there's no way you could hear that. It was mostly instinct than anything else that was warning me of that presence. Common sense was telling me that it was just my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortable sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was somebody there when you turned around, would you be able to accept that? I'd be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me. But I didn't have enough courage to even do that simple task. Alright, I could try speaking to them. The person behind me might answer me. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, just so long as I didn't have to turn around. If I had calmed down and thought about it, I would have known that That wouldn't have solved anything. Who is it? I spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I could almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time I was certain I heard it. As if hesitantly trying to answer my inquiry, I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it clearly. It was a girl. A young girl. I didn't know who, but a tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to this current predicament: a scream. All the force in my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all thought processes in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back as I did so. It was definitely there, right there. Somebody was there. Until the moment I turned around, until I brought the area behind me into my field of vision, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence suspended in the empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. They looked like they weren't there, but they were actually still standing there. As I screamed, all my emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. The metal bat held firm in my right hand, as if drawn there by a magnet. A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remembered reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship or something. I brandished my will to fight. The afterimage of that amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from left to right, beating against the entryway. That sounded like it hit something. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force of the rebound into a sweep to the left. Okay, so it didn't hit someone, it hit the wall. Now it sounded like it hit something else. Your parents are going to be pissed, man. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through empty space, but they seemed to have a great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. The attack wasn't the only thing required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard it was embedded in and screamed as I spun my entire body in a large arc. Rah! My screams shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swing with even more destructive power. Crack! Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike with this certainly fatal force behind it shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat, the invisible enemy, there but not there, dispersed. When I was certain that the enemy had retreated, I locked the front door and latched the chain. No way had it only feigned retreat and was now inside my house. Once again, I channeled my aggression and searched the house for the presence. But it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. At that moment, the tension drained from my body, and I let out a deep sigh of relief. All of the emotions I had been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, and disbelief all mixed together and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head back a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition I dreamt up in my confused state, but I didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Mibara. Compose yourself. But no matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon, and without a doubt, something was behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof? I had just one piece. When I asked, "Who was it?" they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had clearly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oyashiro-sama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. The roundabout way it had been done was also still a mystery. If it was perpetuated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Rina and the rest of them doing it, but it would be solvable. Uishi-san and the rest of the police would surely arrest my enemy. But if it was a manifestation of Oyashiro-sama's curse, I wondered what would happen. Uishi-san very clearly declared that curses didn't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable. But as things were now, with the rising possibility that the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Uishi-san this was the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Uishi-san. With me having so few allies to begin with, and not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse or not, there was no merit to doing that. I better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind the clock. There was still the ever so slight possibility that I was actually confused when I thought I was composed, and I was just going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful would that be if that was really what happened? I would be able to refute Oyashiro-sama's curse. But if I denied Oyashiro-sama's curse, then that would mean admitting that Rina and the rest were the perpetrators. If I said that Rina and the rest weren't the perpetrators, that would mean believing in Oyashiro-sama's curse. By denying both of those, I would be admitting that I myself was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilemma of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back slightly to cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accepting what was actually happening was reality. Accepting what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oyashiro-sama's curse wouldn't exist and I would still be the bestest buddies with Rina and the rest. I would have to be crazy. That was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing. And we will be ending the episode here, so if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving it a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more content in the future, and until next time, everybody, have a good one. I'll see you later. Bye!